You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Now get the guns, the drugs from my generation. I'll take the fall, the saints, the confirmation. Yeah, it's a sex, the gods, the fakes, the fraud, they're messing with me. Come on, come on, come on, let's get it out. Move to the music, play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Welcome back to Reliving the War, and welcome back to the 22nd of June 1998. Tonight, Raw comes from Austin, Texas, while Nitro takes place in Jacksonville, Florida. We are days away from the 1998 King of the Ring, one of the WWF's most memorable shows of the year. And over on Nitro, the commentators have an announcement regarding the biggest match in the history of our sport, according to Tony Schiavone. So let's see what all the fuss is about over on TNT. So the biggest match in the history of our sport is Karl Malone in DDP versus Dennis Rodman and Hulk Hogan. Forget about all those Starrcade main events, forget about the Horsemen competing in War Games, this tops them all. The commentators are putting Karl Malone over big time. The match takes place at Bash at the Beach, and we'll see footage of a press conference a little later on. DDP comes to the ring and he says this is a dream match for him personally. He's sick of, and I quote, Hulk Hogan sushi eating, movie making, fat cat laid back living off his legend self. If you take the sunglasses off Hollywood Hogan, you'd see in his eyes he doesn't want it that bad anymore, but DDP certainly wants it bad. The mailman Karl Malone wants the worm pretty badly too. He craves the big worm. So at Bash at the Beach, it's gonna be simple.
You're going out with a bang!
Disco fever, yeah, 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 yeah.
Disco Inferno versus Len Denton, and not only is the outcome predictable, but so's the commentary. I mentioned this before, but it made me laugh again when Mike Tenay and Tony Schiavone talked about how much Disco has improved, how Disco's obnoxious but still looked really good in this match. It's always the same thing, and it's only dependent on who Disco wrestles. If Disco was wrestling, say, Dean Malenko, the commentators would call him a pompous scumbag. If Disco wrestles Len Denton, he's a hard worker and only gets better week after week. The Inferno got the win with a pile driver, and during the match, the commentators announced a Bret Hart versus Chris Benoit match happening later tonight. Kevin Greene shows up on Nitro for an interview and he puts over the Jaguars before continuing on. When Mean Gene mentions Greene leaving the Panthers only to come back again after signing a deal with the 49ers, the crowd boos. Greene says he's putting all that behind him and he's just a competitive athlete. The more Kevin talks about football, the more the crowd lose interest. Kevin puts over the Four Horsemen, saying it's good to see Benoit and McMichael again, and he also says Goldberg was his roommate back in Goldberg's rookie year. This comment leads to Kurt Hennig and Rick Rude showing up. Kurt says he's sick of outsiders like Greene trying to come in and take the spotlight away from guys like Hennig and Rude. Just then the Giant gets in the ring and Kevin gets sneak attacked. Nobody comes out to help Greene, but that doesn't stop him looking for a fight after the beatdown. During a commercial break, JJ Dillon makes a Greene versus Giant match for Nitro tonight while both men were being held back. And check it out, the Enforcer Arn Anderson's backstage. Ultimo Dragon trainee Tokyo Magnum, or Tokoyo Magnum as the case may be, took on Yuji Nagata next, and this Tokyo Magnum boy sure is flamboyant. Alex Wright may have some competition here. These fans walk by with a sign that says Hulk Hogan looks like wet leather as the match continues on. The two counter arm bars, Nagata makes Tokyo smell his sticky fingers, and afterwards Tokyo's like, oh, that was rough. He tries to flip over Nagata, but he gets put down with a spinning wheel kick, and Nagata wins with the Nagata lock. You might be wondering why the Nagata lock looks different, and that's because Yuji had 4 submission finishers known as the Nagata lock. This one, the modified figure 4, was Nagata Lock 1. Backstage, Stevie Ray jumps Chris Benoit, so it looks like Stevie hasn't forgotten about Benoit's positive comments towards Booker T last week. And then we get a video of Raven going for a walk. Seriously, he's walking about talking about his dad beating him up after a bad day at work. He says it's better to feel something than nothing. Quote the Raven, nevermore. Thanks, Raven. Horace and Sick Boy then took on the Public Enemy in a tag team match, and it sucked. Sorry, but it sucked. Just look at this. The Public Enemy win after Rocco Rock throws himself into Horace and a stop sign. No need to talk about this one at all. Raw kicks off the only way it knows how to, with a Vince McMahon promo. On Nitro, Bret Hart's got a few things to say. Vince gets in the ring and he introduces Kane to the ring. This should be fun, that Kane boy doesn't shut up. Paul Bear isn't here with the big red machine, he's watching at home, but we'll hear from Studley Paul via satellite. Vince tells Kane that this Sunday will be the greatest night of his life. Kane's history, the days of ridicule, scorn and abuse, it'll all be gone because Kane will take his place as WWF champion. It's Kane's destiny to defeat Stone Cold Steve Austin, and not even Stone Cold can stop destiny. Kane's going to dedicate his title win to Paul Bear, apparently, and then Vince says the match at King of the Ring will have a special stipulation, a match that has never been done before. There's no pinfalls, no submissions, no countouts, no disqualifications. The winner will be the man who draws first blood on his opponent. Kane's so confident that he can win the match that, well, let's hear Kane speak for the first time.
If I do not win the title, I will set myself on fire.
Paul Bear watches this from home and he's absolutely distraught. Vince McMahon confirms that Kane will breathe his last breath if he doesn't win the championship. And yeah, a tad extreme, isn't it? If Kane loses and he doesn't do himself in on the pay-per-view, I'll be asking for a refund. On Nitro, Mean Gene reminds viewers that Bret Hart tried to recruit Benoit into the NWO on Thunder and it didn't work out. Bret says this.
Let me tell you about a man named okay?
You know, I take it all back. Bret Hart in WCW was totally awesome. Bret says he remembers Benoit as a snot-nosed punk running around Calgary, and it was the Hart family that gave him a chance to be what he is today. Well, be what he was in 1998, not today. That would be weird. It's the fans' fault that Bret and Benoit turned on each other. Benoit used to be a good kid until he came to WCW, and now he wants to run with the big dogs. Well, Benoit's going to step up to the greatest technical wrestler in the world later on Nitro, and Benoit's going down to the excellence of execution. Check out Bret's sick attire too. It's Bret the Drip Man Hart. Bill Goldberg versus Rick Fuller on Nitro. My money's on Rick Fuller. On Raw, Ken Shamrock battles Mark Henry. You know something? I'm absolutely fed up with Shamrock feuding with the Nation. This has been going on since, Survivor Series 1997? Move on, Kenny boy, move on. Looks like Sergeant Slaughter got the night off. He didn't appear. Sorry, my bad. Of course, Slaughter won't miss an opportunity to send the Nation back to the locker room. Silly me. Shamrock tries to bring the big man down with a few kicks, but Mark delivers a power slam and a big leg drop. Kenny Boy then takes a stinger splash. He gets his back wrecked with an elbow drop. And there's a bear hug, ladies and gentlemen. Exciting stuff. The hold gets broken, but Henry keeps the pressure on with a body slam and a splash across the back. Mark locks in Bear Hug 2, the revenge of Bear Hug. Shamrock breaks free, but he never was going to sunset flip Mark Henry, was he? Go for it, Mark. You've earned it, big man.
Big Mark Henry, Grizzly Bear Hug.
After Bear Hug number 3, Shamrock tries to knock Mark down a few times. A Hurricane Rana works and Mark falls out of the ring. And then Vader shows up to show Kenny Boy how it's done. Earl Hebner didn't see a thing, so Henry gets back inside the ropes where he takes a belly-to-belly suplex. Ken Shamrock advances to the King of the Ring semi-finals. Ken says after the match he's gonna be the next King of the Ring and all that nonsense, but I was more distracted by his missing tooth. He didn't lose it during the match. Here's a beautiful picture of Kenny before the bout took place. So he must have forgotten his dentures or something, who knows. Edge is sitting in the audience. We're going to see his Raw debut a little later on. And we briefly go back to Paul Bearer's love pad where he just got done porking someone's mom. Paul's going to lay some knowledge on us all very soon. Can't wait. Over on Nitro, we've got good old Ricky Fuller taking a beating from Bill Goldberg. Goldberg pulls off his rolling leg lock very early on, but he needn't bother working hard in this one. It ends in a matter of seconds when Fuller tries to get all aggressive with a kick to the knee followed by a kick to the face. And, you know, with the amount of times Fuller's jobbed to Goldberg, you'd think he'd know how to take a spear by now. Still, we get a display of Billy Boy's raw strength here. A jackhammer shatters Rick Fuller's dreams of ending the streak. Mike Tenay says Rick Fuller is victim 102, but that's incorrect. Goldberg defeated Reese's Peanut Butter Snack-Size Cups on Thunder, so this victory means Goldberg is actually 104-0. It worries me that our counter's higher than the WCW count, but you've watched me name every match since the streak began. Let's see where it ends up though at the end of the year. X-Pac versus Dustin Runnels on Raw. On Nitro, the Wolfpac cut a promo. Mike Tenay had the pleasure of attending another mid-card barbecue, and our guy here's like, please don't ask me a question, please don't ask me a question. Little Tomato Sting here is a bit confused in regards to Karl Malone and Dennis Rodman.
Young man, it's a big one!
He's gonna bang Dennis Rodman!
This absolute beast of a man offers his opinion on the Bash at the Beach tag team match too.
Rodman's gonna stun Malone, baby! Yeah!
He's an animal!
An animal! An animal!
The Wolfpac come down to the ring and Kevin Nash shows he's down with the cool kids when he says he thinks Goldberg killed Kenny. By sheer coincidence, a guy brought a sign saying the exact same thing. Sting says Jacksonville is red and black and Kevin Nash plays with a blow-up doll. The Stinger wants to lay down a tag team challenge to anyone who wants a shot at the gold, and I don't know, it looks like the Wolfpac may have been enjoying some extracurricular activities backstage. Not sure why I think that, but I do. Sting then nonchalantly says, yeah, that's it, I made a challenge, and he just doesn't know where to go next with this. So Nash takes the mic and he says the Wolfpac is just too sweet and that's it over. A very, very odd promo and one I encourage you to check out just for how weird it is. Like last week, it's a huge waste of time that could have been shortened down to a 10-second backstage promo before a Nitro commercial break. On Raw, X-Pac gets a shot at redemption after that awful finish last week, so let's check this one out. Dustin Runnels is praying to God above that this match doesn't suck, and so am I. Runnels wants a handshake, X-Pac wants a BJ, Waltman blindsides the former Goldust and he pulls off a sit-down facebuster. This would become known as the X Factor. Pac hits a flying kick while Dustin's on the outside that looked good. He pulls off his corner kick combo, his bulldog gets countered though and he ends up getting his little degenerate smashed on the top rope. After taking a clothesline, X-Pac gets dropped over the top rope chest first and he sells it brilliantly. Dustin then falls out of the ring as Jim Ross promotes WWF.com. Chyna gets involved by hitting Dustin with an elbow right to the chest, and back in the ring, X-Pac delivers a few lightning quick leg drops before applying a chin lock. That's more like it. Dustin stands up, he gets put down again with a kick. Chinlock number 2 gets applied as X-Pac tries to become a legend of Reliving the War, but he doesn't make it to number 3. Chyna ends up tripping Dustin up at the ropes, and even though the referee sees it, he lets the match continue on. Another kick catches Dustin off guard, X-Pac wins via pinfall, and Dustin tries to get that handshake again, but X-Pac won't do it. A way better match for Sean Waltman this week, but a bad showing for Dustin Runnels. Pray harder next time. Big Sexy the Jan Killer Paul Bearer gets interviewed and he says Kane means what he says. If he gets an idea in his head, he always follows up on it, and that means Kane will unalive himself if he loses a fucking wrestling match on pay-per-view. Paul says Kane won't lose though, because Bearer's gonna leave his dirty little smut house and attend the King of the Ring show later in the week. Thank God for that. Jerry Lawler and Al Snow cut a promo on Raw, plus we have Mark Mero versus Double J. On Nitro, Daz Wunderkind takes on Eddie Guerrero. Jerry Lawler says that he heard Al Snow went into the cleaning lady's closet and stole her dress just to sneak up on Jerry. So Lawler tells Al to save himself from the bother and just come down to the ring. Lawler has something special for Al. Snow shows up from the audience and it looks like Head stole Jerry's crown. Lawler tells Snow to hand it back, and Al can have his meeting with Vince McMahon, finally. Al says Head has sticky fingers, Lawler says Head doesn't have fingers, and Al says neither do chickens, but they sell those in restaurants. Yuji Nagata has sticky fingers too, just ask Tokyo Magnum. Snow takes the agreement papers, Lawler takes his crown, and what Jerry gave Al wasn't an appointment, it was a match contract. Al, Snow and Head versus Too Much at the King of the Ring. If Al wins, he gets his meeting with Vince McMahon. Al isn't buying it, he says nothing's changed and McMahon just wants him to do the JOB on the PPV, but Lawler says no, if Al does the JOB on the PPV then Al is history. Snow needs to win the match to get his meeting with Big Vinnie Mac. Snow just wants to get it over with now. He lays on the mat and he says, "Pin me, pay me," so Vince can get his jollies. So the King tells Too Much to come down to the ring. Al Snow decides to hit Christopher and Taylor with Head, and then Al tells JR that Head doesn't lay down for anybody. The King of the Ring match has been accepted, so that's one we can look forward to later in the week. Speaking of King of the Ring, the winner of Double J vs Mark Mero will go on to face Kane Shamrock at the pay-per-view later in the week. Not a lot to talk about here, unfortunately. No robot monsters, no motherfuckers, just Double J having an absolute brain fart and Mero almost tearing a ligament in his knee. Marvelous Mark, though, does seem to be utilising a lot more of his aerial attacks recently, and that's a good thing. Jacqueline ends up tripping up Double J. Tennessee Keith Lee takes exception to this. The referee gets distracted and Mero hits a low blow followed by a TKO. And just like last week, Sable walks down looking pretty, big. And Jarrett's able to wake up and perform a DDT. Double J wins, so it's Jarrett versus Shamrock in the first King of the Ring semi-final.
Now is the time, now is the place. Alex Wright bratwurst right in my face.
Oh, big bratwurst. Big bratwurst.
Yeah, we can't look over that. This lucky lady got a smooch from Das Wunderkind, and look at her. This was, and probably still is, the very best day of her life. I'm a bit torn here. Two of my WCW heroes go on to war, Alex Wright and Eddie Guerrero. Chavo comes down to freak Eddie out a little, but he ends up running to the back so Eddie can go ahead and have his match. Eddie fires himself up in the ring before the opening bell. We can see that cut he got at the Great American Bash still hasn't healed up, and Alex is a little perplexed when fans chant Eddie sucks. It's usually Das Wunderkind getting these kind of reactions. He body slams Eddie, he lays the boots in, and then he gives the crowd some Saturday Night Fever just to get some heat, and as always, it works. He thinks he can get a bit more though, so he lays the boots in again, he dances again, and the crowd boos louder. What a guy. Eddie fires back and he gets vicious with a few kicks and a few hard chops. Alex tries to chop Eddie down, but admittedly he doesn't hit as hard as Latino Heat. Alex hits a backbreaker, he has a moment to think about what to do next, and yeah, why not? Alex gets sent back to Europe after a few European uppercuts. He takes a time out following a clothesline, but he gets back in and he performs a bridging suplex. This is a move you don't see too often. It's usually a bridging German suplex, or maybe a Northern Light suplex or a Dragon suplex, but Alex pulls it off perfectly with his shoulders well off the mat. It's the small things you notice with Alex. No, scrap that, it's the absolute massive thing you notice with Alex. Das Wunderkind misses his top rope knee drop, Eddie hits a brainbuster, and here comes Chavo Guerrero telling Eddie to do it the Guerrero way. He then takes a phone call on the microphone and he tells whoever it is that he'll call him right back, and this showcase of insanity leads to Eddie getting distracted and Alex Wright winning the match following a neckbreaker. Alex Wright, the legend killer. Chavo gets in the ring and he tells Eddie to cheer up. It's all about how you play the game. Chavo then rambles on about a game of Monopoly he had last night. Eddie calls Chavo a wacko and Chavo corrects Eddie, saying no, his name isn't Wacko, it's Chavo.
C-H-A-V-O, C-H-A-V-O, and Chavo was my name.
Chavo keeps talking about his game of Monopoly as Eddie tries to get away. Tony Schiavone says the guys in the white suits will be here any moment now. Road Dogg vs Kane on Raw should be a doozy. On Nitro, Konnan takes on Scotty Riggs. Should be another doozy. Has Scotty Riggs won a match since joining the flock? I honestly can't remember, and I can't be annoyed going back and checking out the results. Sure, it would be funny if he beat Konnan here on Nitro though, that would really show me, wouldn't it? Yeah, he topped out at the Tequila Sunrise. There's a lot to be said about WCW's mid-card. There's definitely an insane amount of talent floating around World Championship Wrestling, and we got to see some of the world's best yet most underappreciated superstars every Monday night. The thing is though, and this is something that no one brings up when talking about the WCW undercard, I'd say around 95% of the undercard matches are very, very predictable. You do get the odd surprise here and there, but generally you can always pick the winner. After this, we get treated to some footage from the Karl Malone and Dennis Rodman press conference held at Planet Hollywood in LA. Karl's trying to be all serious, but you can tell Rodman and Hogan are having fun with this. Karl tells Rodman size matters, and Alex Wright agreed when watching this backstage. All Malone's thinking about is beating Rodzilla and his, quote, sissy friend Hulk Hogan. And the only man who doesn't speak here is the man responsible for putting this match together, DDP. It was Page who had the real relationship with Malone, and it was Page who facilitated all this. Over on Raw,
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Shut up.
Paul Bearer watches the match at home and Billy Gunn gets sent to the back. Road Dogg sticks a thumb in Kane's eye and he tries to build some offense, but the Big Red Machine just pushes him away and the real Double J takes a clothesline. Kane performs a big boot, the floored Road Dogg gets locked in a claw grip. We see a short arm clothesline from the Devil's favourite demon and the destruction continues in the corner. One half of the tag team champions continues to get annihilated when Kane throws Road Dogg into the opposite turnbuckles. James gets a boot up and Kane ends up taking 2 kicks to the head, but Kane just shrugs them off and Road Dogg gets punched in the face for trying to fight back. Still, the New Age Outlaw doesn't give up. He sends Kane over the top rope and he acts up to the audience afterwards, but that was a mistake. Kane drops Road Dogg's neck over the top rope. The Big Red Machine then sets up a choke slam, but James hits a low blow. Again, it has no effect. Kane's balls were burnt in a fire, so James really should have done his homework. Kane ends up pulling off that choke slam, he tombstones Road Dogg straight to hell, and that's all she wrote. Kane wins on Raw's War. We see Paul Bearer enjoying the match via satellite, and he says again that he knew The Undertaker's plan 2 weeks ago. There was some collusion going on in regards to the dead man not helping Austin, but that doesn't matter right now because The Undertaker shows up to wreck his former manager. It's at this very moment Paul realised he was in The Undertaker's home and not his own, drinking Taker's beer and listening to his NSYNC CDs. Pay attention though to Paul's vibrating face and the post-production sound effects. Undertaker throws furniture as some random woman screams in the background. Must have been Studley Paul's fast company for the night. The feed eventually gets cut off as Undertaker continues to wreck Paul Bearer's living room, and Raw moves on to its next match. Edge debuts next on Raw against Jose Estrada. We've also got Dan Severn versus Owen Hart. Over on Nitro, Stevie Ray takes on Steve McMichael. Big Mongo goes on the attack straight away, but a rake to the face stuns him and oh, how I've missed Steve McMichael's bumps. McMichael comes back with a few right hands and a big clubbing blow to the back. We see a few shoulder charges before Steve puts up the symbol of excellence. And check this out. Stevie grabs Mongo's arm and he wraps it around his own neck. I've no idea what's going on, and I don't think the guys in the ring do either. McMichael pulls off an interesting European uppercut before hitting Stevie with a not-so-super kick. And the production guys say, you know what, let's just go to commercial break, we're not going to miss an awful lot, are we? We come back and Stevie pulls off a spinning back kick, but admittedly it's nowhere near as good as Brother Booker's. McMichael takes a leg drop and a body slam. Stevie applies a Mongo stopping chin lock, but McMichael gets to his feet only to get whacked across the back of the head and kicked in the face. The fight goes to the outside and Tony Schiavone says, we're seeing 2 of the best athletes in the history of our sport. I'm deadly serious. Steve then takes a good looking ring step bump, but I think it only looked good because he actually threw his head into those steps. And the match ends with mercy when Stevie Ray brings a chair into the ring. Chris Benoit runs out and he takes the chair away. Booker T then runs down to take the chair from Benoit, but Booker will not follow Brother Stevie's orders and hit Benoit. Booker tells Stevie he doesn't need a chair to beat Steve McMichael. The Harlem Heat guys leave the ring, so Stevie Ray gets counted out. The crowd chant "We Want Flair" again as the Four Horsemen music plays in the arena, but the Nature Boy isn't here tonight on Monday Nitro. On Raw, Edge makes his WWF debut and it ends in disaster. The very first move Edge pulls off is a spear. Jose takes a few right hands before getting dumped out of the ring. Edge then flips over the top rope, and that's a broken neck right there for Jose Estrada. It's quite tragic too, because these two worked dark matches previously and I'd assume everything went fine. The flip was just a few inches off and it's nobody's fault at all. It's just one of those accidents in wrestling that you really hate to see. Jose can't move, he gets counted out. You can see Edge doesn't really know what to think and there's maybe a little panic here, but that's how it ends. We also see Kane wrecking the dressing room and Mankind's trying to calm him down, but that's not what's interesting here. Do you remember Triple H's duck laugh? Hunk and Hurst Helmsley? Let me remind you.
How do you find that? What's the humor?
Freak. Ignored.
Well, as Kane wrecks the dressing room, he holds his voice box to his throat and it sounds like Honk and Hurst Helmsley. Have a listen.
You knew this was gonna happen! What is the Undertaker thinking when he did it? He knew that Kane was gonna see that! Now the Undertaker...
Owen Hart takes on Dan Severn next on Raw, and the Blackheart isn't intimidated by Dan the Man. He tries a double leg takedown, but Severn answers with a takedown of his own. Owen then gets suplexed, but he comes back with an enziguri and Severn falls on top of him. Owen then pulls off a fisherman suplex and a backbreaker. He tries to make Severn tap out to a chin lock, but Severn's chin is made of titanium, so that's not gonna work. The Beast wakes up and he pulls off a big belly-to-belly suplex, but Owen stays in it with a swinging neck breaker. Owen then grabs a chair, he throws it in the ring, and Severn goes to use it. Owen goes back to the outside and X-pac shows up to hit him with another chair. Owen ends up back in the ring where he takes that modified bow and arrow, you know, the same one that wrecked D'Lo, and Owen gives up. Dan Severn advances to the King of the Ring semi-finals and he's going to face either Triple H or The Rock. The Nation run down to check on Owen. The corner of the chair caught the back of Owen's head and he's bleeding quite a bit. Rock challenges all of D-Generation X to come down for a fight. DX walk down, but Commissioner Buzzkill shows up to ruin all the fun. Still though, Triple H and The Rock are going to hang around for their King of the Ring quarter-final match. That match takes place after a commercial break.
I don't think he's got the jam.
Today's video is brought to you by Bret's Jam, homemade in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. If you're having some sunny days, or if you're being a lousy stinking hyena, you can still ensure you're a jam-up guy by purchasing Bret's delicious, authentic homemade jam. Available in 2 varieties that's sure to make your friends and family question your life decisions. Bret's Jam has never been so easy to obtain. Visit the Rustling Bio store at chinlocks.com today to get the shirt. And also check out the
Old
Horseman Business and Chinlock designs. Bret's Jam. You ain't got it.
So it's The Rock versus Triple H on Raw, while over on Nitro, Hollywood Hogan cuts a promo. Miss Elizabeth says it's sweet to be away from the Macho Man, and after Eric Bischoff cracks himself up making fun of Randy's injury, the Hulkster takes over as usual. Hulk says he always knew Liz wanted the Hulkster and she was only concerned about Randy's wallet. Everyone in the arena bows down to Hulk. He made wrestling what it is today. And at Bash at the Beach, Hogan and Rodzilla are going to outclass and outwrestle DDP and Karl Malone. DDP's only famous because his wife was in Playboy. Scotty Steiner liked that one by the looks of things. Hogan says DDP's also famous for taking the trash out and washing the dishes. And then he calls DDP a little PP. I'm not making this up. Top heel in the company calling dudes little PPs. Karl Malone, meanwhile, is a loser. Hollywood and Rodman are going to drag their carcasses to Venice Beach so they can get fed to Hulk's pet wheels. Bash at the Beach is going to be called Hogan at the Beach. Hollywood and Rodzilla are just too sweet, and that's it. Someone then bops the Disciple on the head with some trash. It was me. I went back in time to show my disgust. Bischoff's taking credit for injuring Savage, by the way. They show a 5 frames per second video of Bischoff kicking a chair into Savage's leg last week in the cage. Not gonna spend a tremendous amount of time on this Rock vs Triple H match either, because it's a match we have seen before and it's a match I'm going to cover quite a lot in the future, so let me summarize it this time. It's all Rock to kick things off, with Hunter going down after a back elbow and a clothesline. Hunter replies with a neckbreaker and a suplex, but Rock's quick to take control again and Triple H ends up taking a people's elbow, the most electrifying move in sports entertainment today. Chyna watched on as the back and forth action continued. Rock takes the facebreaker knee smash. It goes to the outside where Rock gets the better of Hunter, but then Triple H distracts the referee and Chyna gets in the ring. Chyna plants Rock with a DDT and the crowd goes nuts, but it's not enough to end the match. Great spot though. The two share sleeper holds. Rock's quick to notice Chyna getting up on the apron. He turns back and he walks straight into a pedigree attempt, but the IC champ's able to low blow Hunter, seeing as the ref's too busy dealing with Chyna. Rock performs a fisherman suplex and Rock defeats Triple H. The People's Champ meets Dan Severn in the King of the Ring semi-finals. DX and the Nation brawl in the ring following the match. Rock leaves his teammates to celebrate on the ramp. So it appears that this D-Generation X versus Nation rivalry is far from over. Here's the King of the Ring brackets. Dan Severn versus Ken Shamrock is a possibility, and I remember thinking that these two were a sure thing for the finals. We'll see what happens later in the week though. Backstage we see Kane and Mankind and oh my. Mankind says it'll be okay, Paul Bearer will be okay. Kane needs to stay right here because there's something Mankind needs to do. Bret Hart vs Chris Benoit is our next match on Nitro. On Raw, Mankind takes on Billy Gunn. So you'd really need to watch Thunder to understand why Bret and Benoit's fighting here, but in short, Benoit refused to join NWO and Bret's taking it personally. That's all you really need to know because you don't need a story for a match like this. Benoit, in reality, had a lot of respect for Bret Hart, but Benoit's also incapable of taking it easy. Chris strikes first with a quick arm drag and Bret complains about hair pulling. He's been hanging around Hulk Hogan way too much. The two then search for an opening before locking up again, and Bret brings it to the corner for a clean break. Chris again gets the better of Bret with a top wrist lock. Fundamentals, yet pulled off to perfection. The two get to their feet and Bret hits a body slam, but he misses an elbow drop and he walks straight into another arm drag. The crowd were chanting HBK at this part. Benoit applies pressure to the arm, but Bret gets up and it's back to the corner. This time Bret lays in a few body shots and Chris then gets planted with a DDT. The Hitman then absorbs a Chris Benoit chop and he keeps the pressure on with strikes. The second time though, Bret hits the mat hard after getting chopped and Benoit makes the Hitman back up. Bret's now felt what Chris is capable of and now he's a little more defensive. Still, Bret decides to fight fire with fire. He throws Benoit into the corner and he lays in a few European uppercuts. He hits Benoit with an inverted atomic drop followed by a clothesline, but his elbow drop completely misses, leading to Benoit hitting Bret with more chops. Out of desperation, Bret drops Benoit on the top rope and the fight briefly goes to the outside. Benoit gets rammed into the ring post and Bret pummels Benoit before getting back in the ring. The match resumes with a piledriver from the Hitman. Benoit then gets headbutted, and Bret can't believe that this student of the Hart Dungeon has been such easy work so far. After a commercial break, Bret delivers his Russian leg sweep before trash-talking some fans at ringside. The crowd pops when Benoit gets in position for a German suplex, but Bret holds onto the ropes before quickly covering Benoit. Benoit kicks out, and Bret almost makes the referee cry when he complains about the count. Benoit finally fires back. He hits 2 of his German suplexes. Bret counters suplex number 3, but Benoit switches and we see the Dragon suplex. Chris can't cover Bret afterwards though, so the match continues. Chris suplexes the Hitman. The crowd lose their minds when Chris signals for the diving headbutt. Benoit goes upstairs, but he misses his finishing move. Bret did not pay attention here. He decides to try a high-risk move himself, but Benoit wakes up and the Hitman gets superplexed. Chris can't put Bret away though with pin attempts, so he locks in the crossface and the crowd again goes nuts. Bret makes it to the ropes and our match ends when Stevie Ray shows up. Bret pulls out a pair of brass knucks that don't look like brass knucks, but we'll call them brass knucks anyway. He smacks Benoit after Chris gets distracted by Stevie. He gets knocked out cold when in the sharpshooter. So Bret Hart wins a very, very good TV match. Not a great finish, but still a very good match. The Mankind vs Billy Gunn match is nothing special, but the promo Mick cuts before the bout is quite noteworthy. The Hell in a Cell lowers as Mick talks about a picture that hung above his bed when he was a young boy. It included men from the North and South shaking hands at Gettysburg 50 years after the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. I'm pretty sure this is the picture Mick's referring to. It's quite a famous photo that shows the power of forgiveness and how time heals all wounds. When Mankind thinks about his feud with The Undertaker, he imagined things playing out in a similar fashion. Mick and Taker could get together and reminisce in the boiler room of the Gund Arena in Cleveland or standing in the middle of Madison Square Garden. But when The Undertaker attacked Paul Bearer, Foley got a new vision, one of Mankind urinating on Taker's grave. Wow. Mankind says Paul Bearer was defenseless, Undertaker could be arrested and put behind bars, but instead The Undertaker will step into Hell in a Cell this week. Mankind says he has a surprise in store that fans will never forget. When it's all over, Kane will have the WWF Championship, Mankind will have his vengeance, and Uncle Paul will have The Undertaker's soul. Definitely the promo of the week. Mick was so good here, and I could have listened to him talk a lot more instead of wrestling Billy Gunn. Mankind was way more aggressive though in his match. It was almost like going back to 1996. B.A. Billy Gunn had to fight for his life, and China even got involved with an all-out assault which led to her getting sent back up the ramp. Check out Foley's ring step bump here. Ooh. The match got back in the ring very briefly, only for it to spill to the outside again where Gunn dropkicked the ring steps into Foley's face. Billy tried to end it with his piledriver back inside the ropes, but Mankind countered with a slingshot and Gunn ended up taking the mandible claw. Mick Foley wins on Raw's War. After the bout, Mankind leaves immediately to go check on Kane, but Kane's nowhere to be found. We end Monday Nitro with that Kevin Greene vs Giant match. On Raw, Steve Austin cuts a promo. You know, out of all these celebrities that work with WCW, I think I like Kevin Greene the most. He comes down representing Doug Dillinger's new security faction and he hits Giant with a shoulder tackle right away. He drops, he rocks, he rolls, he gets hit with a big clothesline and the Giant follows up with an elbow drop. Kevin then hits a low blow and believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this is where our Nitro main event ends. Curt Hennig and Rick Rude come down just as Greene starts firing up. The Disciple, Vincent and Bryan Adams also show up to give Kevin a beatdown. It looks like all hope's lost, but then the crowd pops big time as Bill Goldberg makes his way down to the ring. Vincent gets speared on the entranceway. Disciple and Bryan Adams get speared at the same time, and the rest of the NWO leave the ring as the crowd continues to go crazy. The Goldberg chants continue as Kevin Greene challenges Curt Hennig and the Giant to a tag team match at Bash at the Beach. Looks like we now have 2 celebrity matches at the upcoming pay-per-view. On Raw, Sable comes down to the ring to introduce Steve Austin. There's no explanation why, and even Stone Cold knows there's something fishy going on here, so he tells Sable to go to the back and flip Vince McMahon off with her pixelated middle finger. Austin then searches under the ring, but there's no one there. He gets back inside the ropes and he invites anyone who wants a piece of Stone Cold to come down for an ass whipping. He then accepts the first blood stipulation at King of the Ring. Stone Cold has bled before and he's not afraid to do it again. And in regards to Kane setting himself on fire if he loses, Austin's gonna bring marshmallows, hot dogs and beer and have his very own WCW mid-card barbecue. If the flames start dying out, then Austin will be more than happy to throw another log on the fire. Kane then shows up on the entranceway. He signals for his pyro, but instead some of that red liquid falls from the ceiling and Austin gets himself a blood shower. Kane says this Sunday the blood on Austin's gonna be for real. The big red machine then walks away and Austin looks pissed off as Raw fades to black. Nitro wins Reliving the War this week. Benoit vs Bret Hart and Alex Wright vs Eddie Guerrero were better than anything Raw had to offer, and that includes the Austin and Kane stuff to close out the show. To be honest, I didn't really get into Kane vs Austin back in 1998, and looking back now, I feel the same way. I don't know why. I also didn't get into Dude Love vs Austin, but on a second viewing it was actually really good, so maybe I'll think different after watching the King of the Ring main event. Nitro's main event was truly awful, but there was enough good things happening before the last 10 minutes or so to secure Nitro a point this week. So we've now got 58 points for Nitro, 65 points for Raw, and 16 ties on the board. In the TV ratings, Raw stayed at a 4.3, while Nitro jumped up slightly to a 4.1. The 1998 King of the Ring is the next video getting uploaded in the Reliving the War series. We'll see who wins the big tournament, we'll see a Hell in a Cell match that we'd never ever forget, and we'll also check out what happens in the WWF Championship First Blood match. You know what to do, guys, watch it ASAP in case it gets hit by YouTube, or if you want to watch it early and support the channel, then head over to Patreon. Thanks for watching another episode of Reliving the War. I hope you had fun, and I hope to see you again later this week. I have some more Hall of Famers to shout out today. These are guys who signed up over on Patreon to help the channel out while also getting early video access and access to content not available on YouTube. Greg Penna, a jam-up guy from Reliving the War if you remember, Eddie Moore, Joshua Macon, and That Sprite. All Hall of Famers and all immortalised in a Wrestling Bios video. What an honour. Thanks a lot guys for supporting the channel.